It's a great question. There's a report called the Startup Genome Report that talks about the different startup hubs and like how they're scored. San Francisco or Silicon Valley, New York, and Tel Aviv are 1, 2, and 3, respectively. And I've lived in all of those places, so I can tell you that I've seen firsthand what makes them special. It would take a long time to go into the characteristics of each, but I would say let's talk about Israel for a second. So as Marguerite mentioned, my labor of love, number 2, apart from Tech Bikers, is called VC Cafe. It's a blog I started in 2005 to cover Israeli startups and VC investments in Israel. This year alone, from January till October, there's been more than $5 billion in exits in Israel. I think that's for tech startups alone. I'm not talking about other stuff, like Warren Buffett investing like $3 billion in an Israeli metal cutting company, his first investment outside of the US. So 5 billion plus exits in 1 year, that's probably more than UK, France, and Germany combined. So I think the first thing that's different is liquidity or exits. Huge concentration of technical talent. It has different reasons of why that happened, etc. But also, because of the lack of domestic market, they tend to address the global market from day one. And then even if they don't become profitable, they are probably building some worthwhile technology. They manage to get a foothold, especially in the American market, but increasingly Asia. And then they become an acquisition target for a big corporation that's trying to go into the space. A good example is Waze. Google bought Waze for $1.3 billion earlier this year. The company existed for 2 years, but they managed to create a product that's truly disruptive and can really complement some of Google's efforts in the geo space. And you can think about use cases like self-driving cars and glass, etc., that this crowdsourced real-time information would be valuable. So this is the first thing, like liquidity and exits. But the other thing that I think London has going for it is that it's truly underserved market by startups. When I was living in San Francisco, I co-founded my own startup in 2003 that built text input solutions, and I worked in startups and with startups for the past 10 years. And when I was living in San Francisco, it's so hard to get talent. Like I was doing some hiring, and I had to offer college graduates salaries that are unheard of in any other place in the world. In London, it's not so hard to get the talent. There's not that, the competition on great people is not that high. Well, it is high, but it's not as bad as Silicon Valley. And the other thing is that, companies, like here, the companies are probably being pitched by 10 startups that do the same thing this week. In London, you're probably going to be the first one, and the battle is different. It's convincing them to trust in a startup. But if you're coming with experience, especially people that are coming back to London after having successful exits, etc., in the Valley, you have an unfair advantage, and the opportunity to disrupt, all industries, not just apps for, forgive me if it's offensive, but 24 to 35 white males in San Francisco. If you think about education, construction, health, and the variety of industries, fashion, that exists around the world, all of these startups are hitting essentially a virgin ground, which is really compelling if they manage to scale. You want to give the government view?
What you said. I think that from the government's point of view, that we did a lot of research, and there's maybe 50 cities that are going to be real strong tech hubs across the world. I think London's just a bit more mature than the others. We've got, with the government interjection to accelerate this, I think that's where we come into play, and other governments are following suit with their digital strategies, basically. I'd say, it's all those different elements: education, the talent, the tax reliefs, making sure that the rent's not going high, too high for startups to actually be in the tech city. So, it's all those things combined.
I would just add one thing that I think is interesting about London, two things. One is in terms of policies, there's 2 policies that have really changed the game in London. One is called EIS and the other one is called Seed EIS. They're related, the Enterprise Investment Schemes. And these are essentially tax write-offs for angel investments on the upside and the downside. So it became extremely hard to lose money investing in startups, and that unlocked unprecedented amounts of capital for the early stage. Then they get stuck on the A round, but that's a different story. And I think that has really fueled the growth. And the other thing is this Tech City Investment Organization, or TCIO, or Tech City, I think the branding now is Tech City. That essentially they decided to champion this sector. And you know, you can debate of what's the role of government, to your question, to create entrepreneurship or to foster innovation, but we need all the help we can get, right? Like when you're an entrepreneur, you're alone in the trenches, and if someone is rooting for you and helping with grants, you know, bringing international companies to pour money, bringing international VCs to set up local offices, championing the successful startups, helping companies go public, I think it creates a great amount of lubrication that it helps things go smoother for entrepreneurs. It's not going to make or break their businesses if they're not great at what they're doing. If they don't have a great product, it's not fake growth. But if actually there's something there, it's going to get much easier for them to grow.